okay?
Okay, sure.
So good afternoon, secretaries and treasurers, and welcome to this afternoon session. We just had a wonderful opportunity to teach me how to share a screen. And so I thank Bill and Alan and Neal for doing that. And I've always said I like to be the master of my own destiny. So I learned how to share a screen. We're going to start the slideshow. I first want to compliment Alan Stair and Dave Canarium, because they gave you a lot of the how-to for secretaries. And what I want to focus on for my very small portion of this is the why. I feel very strongly that as district secretary, there's lots of things that I do that perhaps club secretaries don't. I honestly don't feel how qualified I am to be doing this session. So when I'm at a loss, I look for experts. And I reached out to an expert by the name of Lori Palmer from the East Dalton Club, now the Riverbend East Club. And Lori gave me some really good pieces of information that answer that question as to the why. So we're going to go ahead and start the slideshow and move through just the very few slides that I have, and then I'm going to pitch it over to my friend Neal. So I'm sharing my screen. I'm pretty proud of that. And we'll start the slideshow. So this is the district assembly training session for club secretaries and treasurers. We'll follow that. And so if you're in the wrong place, please jump over to room B. And then I just wanted to share at the top my information. I'm a 20-year Rotarian in the Rotary Club of Jacksonville. There's my email and my phone number. And you can also, now that we all know how to get into DACDB and find a member, you can find me in DACDB as well. So here are my three big ideas. This is really what I want to rest in for a moment. Those of you that know me very well know that I was born and raised a Baptist, and any good Baptist sermon has three main points. And so that's what I want to just take a moment and talk about today. And that is to keep your club roster up to date. It's very important. Remember that we just came from a session with Alan about the Rotary citation. Data that hasn't been input is data that hasn't been inputted is data that doesn't exist. You can have it somewhere, but if it doesn't go into DACDB, if it doesn't go to the matriculate up to RI, or if you use Club Runner, then it really isn't going to be of use to anybody. So a direct quote from my friend Lori Palmer, I want to quote her accurately, so please bear with me as I read. Keeping club roster up to date is very important. So much is based on having a well-maintained roster. It helps you with communication. Obviously, it helps you with attendance. I want to talk about that for just a minute. It helps you, it also helps you see where your strengths and weaknesses are. You might look at attendance in a way that you see that your attendance drops during a certain time of the year. You might want to be able to look at your membership and see what categories people are to tap into their strengths. So keeping a well-updated membership database is very important for a lot of reasons. The other reason is item number 2, it keeps members informed. Once you're able to master the DACDB calendar, it's a great tool for everyone to be able to look in and see what events are going on. And I can honestly tell you that I made a side note during, and Lynn, this should probably scare Catherine when I get these ideas, you know, but I think it would be grand for any club to, in the DACDB calendar, have the dates of all the standing committees. We do a lot of work through Rotary, and I'm hoping this is an idea that resonates with lots of secretaries on this Zoom call right now. We do a lot of the work in Rotary through standing committees. You know, a particular club has a membership committee that meets the first Thursday of the month, or they have a board meeting that meets this time. It's real important for club members to know when committees are activated or going, and it's really important when you have new members. Something that I've learned recently is we old timers, I'm an old timer of 20 years, we take for granted that we know all the little ins and outs of when things happen in our club. If you put that out on the DACDB database and you take the time to train new members on it, then they have access to that as well. And that just greatly improves your communication. And then also keep a well-developed, when you keep that well-developed calendar, it's really helpful to a very, very busy president. I just wanted to add that little piece, but it keeps your members informed. And then you keep a well-developed membership, and it's a much more active. And we know one thing, we know that when members are engaged, I wish we were in the room together. You know, Zoom just doesn't do it for me, guys. I like to be looking in your eyeballs. But when we have active, involved members, what do we have? We have members that stay in the club. And so that is the big byproduct of keeping everybody well informed. You keep your roster up to date so that you know how you're meeting your goals. You keep your members informed so there's good communication and the good work of Rotary can go on, and you keep a well-developed calendar. And those are the three big ideas that Lori Palmer shared with me. Then, you know, it's important that members know how to update personal information, update club data, your own, you can do that. You can do your own personal information, update your club data. You know, clubs are going through a lot of changes right now. And sometimes meetings are in person, sometimes meetings are on Zoom. That's really important to keep that information updated. And I know that every club does this a little bit differently, but updating those club goals are important as well, so that you can be of support to your club president. The big thing coming up for everybody is the function that Dave went over so very, very accurately, and that is updating your club officers. And I actually got a piece of advice from DGE Ryan, and I want to be able to share that with you. When you're putting in that, what I would call the P line, your president nominee needs to be put in as a nominee and not as the president of XYZ year. They need to be named nominee. DAC-DB doesn't recognize that if they're not put in as a nominee with the accurate year. So that can mess up the P line if that's not done. So when you enter that into DAC-DB, specify the PN by title and not by the PE of the year they're going to serve. Does that make sense to everybody? Without seeing your faces, I can't really tell. So maybe there's going to be, I see nothing in the chat. So I'll wait a minute and see if anybody wants to put anything in the chat. That was a real important piece of information that Ryan said can mess up the works. As my mama would say, it could gum up the works if you don't put that P in accurately by the year that they're going to, by their title, and not just calling them the PE of 21-22. Does that make sense to everybody? Maybe everybody's doing it right.
Pam left you a text message, and she said just to repeat it one more time.
Sure, absolutely, because I know when Ryan said it to me first time, I didn't get it. When you are entered into DAC-DB as a club leader and you're going to be the PN, add it by the title PN, and not as the PE for 21-22 or 22-23. Call them the title
of president nominee.
Right. Call them the PN and not just PE for a certain year.
And Cathy, Joe, if you think back to what Alan was talking about, when you load that data in there, as the president-elect, you're loading information for the 21-22 year.
Right.
So all of the data that you load is for the 21-22 year.
Correct.
So that's why you give the people the appropriate title for what they're going to have for this year,
right?
For this coming year, and then the database will automatically advance them. Exactly.
And that's why when it's been done wrong, sometimes people I know we had a gentleman in the last session that wanted to create their account. I'm just talking hypothetically now, but if when they were loaded in, they weren't loaded in accurately, it might not be recognized. So it's real important that you do that. Correct. Make sure though, all Rotarians lead by example. So make sure your own personal information is updated. Make sure your club data is updated. And if there's any how-tos that you need, there are great tutorials on that left side of DAC-DB. Then just some reminders. Only you and the club president, I got to get rid of this little thing here. Only you and the club president can add club officers. And that's really important to do that accurately, because that will grant them access to their roles. And again, I put it again as a reminder here, enter the club president nominee by title, not as elect for the year they will serve. That's a much cleaner way, I think I was saying it. Something that I've heard about from a lot of clubs around the district is that it is an expectation that club secretaries take written board minutes, and those board minutes should be provided to all club members within 60 days of the board meeting. That is a lot of work, but it's well worth it. We know that a well-informed club is a well-oiled club, and that when members are in the know, then they are able to be people of action. And then the club can, as Rotary International President-elect Shekhar Mehta said, we can turn the wheel together. You have club members out there that have never seen the minutes, don't know what's going on, then how can they pitch in and help? So that little reminder really has struck home with me recently as I've kind of sat back and reflected on my comments for today. Those are the big thinking concepts that I wanted to share. I will have to be honest. I sent an email out to all club secretaries and secretaries-elect and asked for feedback, and received none. So I'm thinking maybe this is a really great, well-informed group, and or else just a really busy group, and you didn't want to, you didn't have the time to write your question out. I'm not sure what happened, but I didn't get any feedback, so I skipped that screen and go back to just general questions. And I think I'm going to stop sharing now so I can look at your faces. I'm glad I learned to share the screen, Bill, but I don't like it because I can't see everybody. It really set me off my game to do that. But thank you, Neal and Alan and Bill, for teaching me how to do it. At any rate, what questions do you have? Let's either raise your hand on the screen or with the reaction icon. And Trent West, do you have a question?
I do. As someone that likes to talk but is not that great at taking notes and potentially being a secretary of a new club, what recommendations would you have for someone that isn't really that secretary oriented?
Well, that's a really good question, and actually I can answer it by something that Mara did for me. I was minding my own business one day, and I was at a district social, and you always got to watch out when the DG, at the time, DGE, walks up and kind of pats you on the shoulder, puts his arm around you. And that's when Mark Roberts, PDG Mark Roberts, asked me to be a district secretary. And I'm not very good at scripting. So here's my tip. It would be to request of those that would be presenting in a specific meeting to give you a quick synopsis of what they are going to say or what they have said. I've leaned on that strategy, and it's worked very well for me. And you all are very techie, so you could ask them to text you what they said or what they plan to say, and then you've got a rough of your notes. Good question. I ask that of Neal all the time because I really want to get the financial information accurate, and so I've gotten better at it. But I've often asked Neal to send me a quick summary of what he said. What other questions are there? Is it appropriate at this time for me to introduce the new district secretary? May I do that? Do I get a thumbs up for that? Yes, there she is. She's rocking the mom bun.
She's ready.
You're gonna see me in the background. So
I was blessed to spend a very nice length of time with Megan Most. I went to her hometown, ate in a great diner, had one of the best chef salads I've ever had. And we had a good time, and we went through everything. Probably didn't teach her everything she needed to know, Probably I learned more sitting on my couch a few weeks ago with Mara Donnelly when when she helped me with what kinds of things I was going to say today. So club secretaries, my advice would be your president's best friend. I know when we're in these, we're not supposed to brag on our own club, but I already put it in the chat that I know a particular club secretary that rocks. She's on the screen now. And there are lots of things that are changing with Rotary. I would encourage you to go out there and investigate, find out, Rotary is moving away from just static attendance and moving more into looking at engagement. I would highly encourage you to figure out how to do that. If I have more time, I would be glad to give a tutorial on that. I know that many of you, how many of you are, let's give a thumbs up that way. How many of you are already entering engagement into DAC-DB? One? What? I'm looking at, what have I got, 2 pages and I have 1 person? Anybody else want to raise their hand and say they're entering engagement? Ooh, there's a training opportunity. Maybe we need to be doing that.
People anyway.
Okay, well, maybe we need to be working on doing that. I am done talking, and I think Neal's got lots of good information for you. Club secretaries, I think you are the heart and soul of your club, and you have my contact information if there's any way I can help you. I probably should have been on the screen with 2 hats, I'm transitioning off of district secretary to be the president of my own club. So I'm pretty excited about that, but I stand willing to help you in any way that I can. Thank you very much. Neal
Thanks,
Miller,
Cathy,
it's all you, friend.
Thanks. Thank you, Cathy. Before I head off to Treasurer Trent, did you have another question? You got your hand still raised.
If I can get my kids to stop yelling for a second. Yeah. I was just wondering, we're exploring dues or which different platforms to pay dues on. We've set up a Venmo account. We've used PayPal for Metro East community previously, but a lot of our members will most likely not want to send in checks. I didn't know if anybody else was using any sort of online payment program that they recommend that's working out for them.
Yeah, so that's a good treasurer question, and I'll try and answer it real quickly based on what limited information I have. Is that there are very few clubs that have electronic payment. I know that some clubs use Club Runner. Club Runner has an electronic payment piece. They're only charged for credit card or debit card transactions that occur much like you would experience if you were using PayPal or Venmo, but it connects right into Club Runner. I am confident DAC-DB has something similar, but I don't know what their fee structure is. So I'm going to jump over and share my screen if I can find the right one. There it is. Okay, so my name is Neal Miller. I'm the district treasurer. I am the assistant governor of Area 1. I am also the district governor nominee designate. So Cathy Jo gets 2 hats, I get 3. My contact information is right there. You're welcome to contact me anytime. Pretty much about anything about Rotary, and I'll do my best to help you or steer you in the right direction. So what does a club treasurer do? Broadly, the treasurer collects money, pays bills, and makes certain the club doesn't take any undue risks. So in May or June of each year, club president should present a budget for the upcoming year. As the Rotary year starts to end, the treasurer needs to update the signature cards for all the club bank accounts. One question that's often asked, and that is who should get the bank statement? So the signer of the account is likely the president. The treasurer may be a signer on the count. Since the treasurer is doing the reconciliation, the treasurer should not be the party to receive the bank statement. It should go to the president or to the secretary, and that person should actually open it because they have the opportunity to notice any significant changes in the bank balance in case the treasurer is doing something with the funds that they shouldn't. Treasurer should report monthly finances to the club board of directors, including budget information, and then a final report in July for the preceding year. The treasurer should collect dues and remit dues. So Rotary International dues are semi-annual. The bills come out in July and January and are payable upon receipt. Make certain you pay those promptly. The district dues, I send out an email in June with instructions. I do not send an invoice because I rely on each club to be honest about the number of members they have as of July 1. The dues normally are $39 a year, but the budget that was approved earlier this morning, the dues for this coming year have been reduced again to $25 a year. And that payment should also be made as soon as possible, but no later than the end of July. The club treasurer manages fundraising and shares financial reports on that. And the Rotary Foundation, the club treasurer collects and submits donations to the Rotary Foundation using the multi-donor form. In November, mid-November, you need to have your 990 federal tax form prepared and submitted. If you can't complete that by mid-November, then you can file for an extension. Treasurer resources. So I do get questions periodically from my club treasurers who can't find the email that came from Rotary International and showing their invoice. You can get your information, the invoice, the outstanding balance by going to My Rotary, then choosing Manage, then Club Administration, and then you'll find the links for the club invoice and the outstanding balance. Much like making changes that Cathy Jo referenced of making changes to officers, only the club president and the treasurer have access to the club outstanding balance and the invoice. And if that doesn't work, you can call me. I can provide you instructions, but I too, as the district treasurer, have no access to that. You can always call Rotary International directly. For the Rotary Foundation contribution forms, I go to Club Administration, then Club Giving. And another great resource at Rotary.org is the Learning and Reference section. You can learn by club roles. There's a special section out there for the treasurer. As I recall, it took me about 20 minutes to go through the 2 or 3 sessions that they had, but there's good information. Even though I've been a treasurer for a long time, I learned a few things. Beyond that, as I've described, you can call me if you have questions, ask your assistant governor, or if necessary, you can ask the district governor. And as I described earlier, the district dues are payable by the end of July. US-based Rotary clubs have insurance through Rotary International. To help us understand more about that coverage, I'm going to call on the district insurance representative, Jack Freiburg, to share some information. Jack is a member of the Rotary Club of Quincy and is the Assistant Governor of Area 6. Jack and I were club presidents the same year, and I'm pleased to introduce my friend and fellow Rotarian, Jack Freiburg. Jack, you should be able to unmute yourself. Hello, Jack. There you
Hello,
go.
Neal. Have you got me verbally? The audio?
Yeah, they've got you verbally, but I've still got my screen up so they can see ajg.com.
Okay, good. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Rotary program covers with Arthur Gallagher, and a little bit about what it doesn't cover, and then touch a little bit upon certificates of insurance and when you may need those. First of all, there are basically two coverages that you have from Rotary International. One's a general liability policy, and the other is a directors and officers liability policy. And then there's going to be a subpart under each one of those. A general liability policy is kind of has two parts. First of all, it has an operations portion of it, and secondly, it has a products portion of it. So the operations portions of it could be, for instance, you make a visit to either a museum or with another other social club, whatever. When you're making that visit on that area, you are covered while you are there, not only just during your regular meeting, but every place you go during the operation of your club. The second portion of it is actually a little bit easier to understand, which is the products portion of the general liability. And the products portion is, for instance, if your club does fundraising, as mine does, by selling food at special events at times to time, all the food, if you sold someone and they got sick from that food, that would once again be covered by the Rotary International program, the product portion of that. Another area that's included in the general liability is is the liquor liability, so that if your club, like mine, has a special event, our Oktoberfest every year, we have to get a certificate of insurance from the HAG website, and then go ahead and take it, showing that it has liquor liability, so we can obtain our special events liquor liability license for the day. So that's covered under the Rotary program too. The next policy is the directors and officers, and under that is another policy called employment practices. Directors and officers liability is designed to cover the directors and officers if they make some mistakes with consequences that are not intended, like they went to. For instance, a few years ago when we had the banking crisis, the directors and officers policies were filed on by the FDIC because of the malfeasance many times of the bank officers in the handling of the bank. And that's a good example of a claim. Now, it's a bank, not a Rotary club, but I'm certain you can take it from there. The other portion of it is the employment practices, and the employment practices portion of things is your discrimination related claims, whether they be age or sex related or whatever. If you, for instance, someone applies for membership and for whatever reason your club turns them down, that in turn that person files suit, that's going to be covered under the employment practices portion of the policy. Now, one area that each individual club ought to handle individually that is not covered under the Rotary policy is crime insurance. So it's really up to each individual club to figure out whether they want to whether they want to write a treasurer's bond or not under their individual club, and it really depends on how each individual club wants to handle that. Now, my club does have a treasurer's bond. They've had it for a number of years. And it's a situation that I think if your treasurer handles much in the way of money, it's probably worth considering, because it's only about, usually for like a $50,000 bond, it's not going to be more than $100 or $200 a year. So each individual club ought to consider that. And then on certificates of insurance are evidence of insurance. And whenever you have an event that is usually going to involve the general public, and it doesn't make any difference whether you're doing that for a city or whether you're doing it on a public, or you're doing it on private facility, many times that owner of that facility is going to ask you for a copy of a certificate of insurance. And the where you go is to go to the Rotary at ajg.com website. It's password protected to go in there and do that, but it's very simple to go in and do it. To issue the certificate of insurance, you do it yourself. When you go in to do the certificate of insurance, you need to have the name and the address of the entity that wants the certificate so you can complete it properly. You cannot change the wording on that Arthur J. Gallagher certificate. It's all in there. It shows that not only that you have $1 million worth of liability limits, but you also have liquor liability. So
Jack, that's what I've got on the screen that they can see right now, is how to log in to insight.agg.com and the username and password.
Yeah, and anyway, I think that changes from year to year, because at least it said that they send out a new email every year with a new password for it. But I don't know whether they actually do that or not, because I've never been a Goes to Our Club secretary. But I can tell you that it's very, very simple to complete that. The instructions there are laid out very well too, and it's a sort of situation that my experience has been throughout the years that anytime you have any kind of event, usually the owner is going to more and more ask for a certificate of insurance. It's just more and more common. That's about all I've got. Is there any questions?
Jack, if I don't get a certificate of insurance, am I still insured?
Absolutely. It's just that usually, usually when you're dealing with any kind of municipality of any sorts, whether it be a city or a county or whatever, they're almost always going to ask it before they're going to give you permission to block off a street or issue a liquor license or something like that. It varies more, but usually the halls, if you're going to have something, a fairly major event that's a fundraising event in a hall, they're going to ask for a certificate too.
I'll ask another one while we're waiting for anybody else who wants to ask a question. My club has a golf outing, and one of the participants is driving a golf cart and turns too quickly and spills out the passenger in the golf cart. Is that covered?
That one's one of those you need to go into the circumstances somewhat. If it's a fellow Rotarian, probably not, because that person is a named insured on the policy, and if they're a named insured, they can't be covered under the liability policy. Mm-hmm. If it's a member of the general public, yes.
I had a quick question. I did put it in the chat. Is there an annual budget level at which we should seriously consider getting a bond? I mean, if our annual budget's over 50,000, for example, or something.
I don't think the general rule. There's not a number there. It's a question of how at what level is the club comfortable with having a financial loss for malfeasance. So it's a question of everybody's individual risk tolerance on that, Dave. It's not really I can't really give you a blanket number, because some clubs that have a very high risk tolerance, other clubs do not. But like I said, for the amount of money involved, a $50,000 bond, it's a very minimal amount of cost.
The district has a bond on the treasurer, and it has less to do with the money, the amount of money that flows through on an annual basis had more to do with the fact that the district has $250,000 in assets. So it would be, potentially a treasurer could abscond with those funds and a large portion of it, and create reports that showed that the money still existed. And so I believe for the district, the decision was more about the bank balance instead of the revenue, because the revenue for the district comes in and out pretty fast. But it's a good question. And I can't actually see the chat right now. So Bill, are there other items in the chat we need to cover?
No.
I have a question. This is Kay Ifner. I'm a treasurer of the Rotary Club of Pike County. So we have a PO box where our bank statements go. And as treasurer, I've been the one that's opened our bank statements because I didn't know differently. So I can take those unopened envelopes and give them to the president.
Yes.
Okay.
And when I was the treasurer of my club in Springfield, as the treasurer, I went by and picked up all the mail, and I would bring the unopened bank statement to the president. Most of the presidents would open it right there, look at it, say, yeah, that's about, I was expecting the balance to be, $40,000 or $20,000, whatever the normal carrying is. They would look at it and hand it to me and go on the way. At the district, we have lots of different buckets. And so I've got bank statements that are going to lots of different people, but they don't come to me, and I just get the information online and download the statements there.
Okay, and for special events, should you have a big special event like, for example, the Oktoberfest with the Quincy Club, do you have special event insurance on top of the Rotary insurance, or just is the Rotary insurance okay?
No,
the Rotary insurance should be good.
The Rotary insurance is designed to cover that kind of event. And one of the ways that Rotary International tracks the kind of events that they have is they see who those certificates of insurance go to. So they have a pretty good handle on how many events Rotary has. I don't know, Neal, do they send that out to the treasurer anymore? They used to send a little risk management questionnaire every so often. Do they still do that anymore?
Not to the best of my knowledge. They don't send it to the district treasurer. I've not been club treasurer for quite some time.
Yeah, could a club treasurer answer that one? Do they ask them anything about the events that they have in the course of the year?
I don't recall ever being asked as treasurer.
Yeah, and
I've been treasurer a long time.
Yeah, because they used to ask a questionnaire once in a while. They primarily offered, I had some questions on there about special event coverage, like did you do an event with fireworks, for instance? And and two of the things that are no-nos I know on the Rotary policy are fireworks and aeronautics. So those are two things. If you're going to do one of those sort of things, you better call Gallagher and talk to them about that.
I believe firearms related items are also any firearms, hatchets, knives. I think all weapons are excluded, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I think they added that after that. There was a board decision a few years back about that.
Yeah,
I think they
about three to 4 years ago. It was somewhat controversial, and so the board made a very clear, drew a very clear line that no weapons.
Yeah.
All right. Any other general questions? Go ahead.
There is a question here, Neal. David Parker from Springfield Sunrise asks, is there an annual budget level at which we should get a bond?
We covered that one.
Okay. I did have a question about bank statements though, because we don't actually get bank statements. I mean, I have access to the banking account online, and the current president's a signatory on the account, but I don't really have any other double checks other than the reports that I present, monthly, although even in COVID we haven't been doing the even monthly. Do I need to have them send bank statements?
So my recommendation to have that check is to have the bank statement sent to the president's home or office, whatever the president's preference is. So that way they're seeing what's coming directly from the bank without you touching it. It's a simple audit, but it protects you and it protects the club.
So did you just, is that different from what I just asked you when I asked if I could just take the unopened envelope from our PO box?
It is not different in that you're taking it in unopened. In David's instance, they're only doing electronic. He's only doing electronic delivery.
Gotcha.
And so my suggestion is tell the bank to do paper delivery, but deliver it to the club president.
Yeah, the reason we went to a club PO box years ago when I took over as treasurer is every time we'd have a new treasurer, they'd use their home address, and statements were being sent to treasurers like for 5 years, you know.
Right.
So cool.
Yep.
Just checking.
Understood.
Yeah, one more kind of comment on that, on the risk management there. You know, your separation of controls advice there, Neal, is right on the money and is exactly the sort of thing that an insurance company would want to know about if they did issue a bond. So, I mean, your comments are right on.
Yeah, and in the small entities that we are, even the district, because we have a larger budget than the clubs do, it's really a one-person show. That you can't really separate the receiving the money from paying the money out. There's fairly limited things that you can do. Okay, so one of the common questions, it looks like we've got 3 minutes left. So one of the common questions I get is accounting software. Clubs have a lot of options available to them. Many clubs use QuickBooks, so I've provided some pricing. There are more options beyond QuickBooks today. There's one at FreshBooks, FreshBooks. It's an online system. Xero, Xero. The club in Springfield moved to Xero. They had been using QuickBooks. But changing treasurers, they had a treasurer that the computer he was using belonged to his employer and they couldn't install QuickBooks on it. So they went to Xero as an online solution. They continued with it in large part because it does everything that QuickBooks did, but it allows more people to have access to it. So if the treasurer is on vacation, the treasurer leaves, there are other people that can immediately log on and they don't have to try to get the QuickBooks file from the treasurer. Zoho is a recognized entity that provides all sorts of online services. And then DACDB, I know some clubs use DACDB's internal accounting system.
Neal, it's
Yes.
me again. Are these special rates on QuickBooks for Rotary or for nonprofit or anything? Because it's more than what we're paying for online. And if there's a discount that we should be getting, I want to make sure we get it.
So are you using QuickBooks Online?
QuickBooks Online, yeah.
And how much are you paying?
Well, it was $400 for the year. I'm not looking at it right this minute, but it was way more than $25 a month. Not at the $75 a month.
Well, so you're paying 30, a little less than $35 a month. So I did go out and check it about a week ago, and I thought these numbers were accurate. But it also depends on. There are lots of versions of QuickBooks. It depends on what features you have added to QuickBooks. It can change the price. Yeah. I
just wanted to make sure there wasn't a special Rotary discount that I didn't know about. So
no, nothing special.
Okay.
Okay. So we got 1 minute left. You should complete an annual club treasurer audit if possible. You can have other club members do that, have a finance committee that looks over what you do. These were just some ideas of other things to talk about. If anybody wants to talk about them in the future, I'd be happy to answer that, but we've reached our 2 o'clock time. So